Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Gary Goldstein in conversation with Ken Pisani discussing The Last Birthday Party. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question section at the bottom of the screen. I see that someone already did, so if you don't know where to find it, there's a little bubble that says 1, and that is where you'll click to find the questions and where you can put yours. And if you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, you can click the like button. It'll bump it up in the queue, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. And please also feel free to continue engaging in the chat area. Virtually, it lets us know you're here and you're engaged, so it's a fun way to see that everyone is present. And we'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our email newsletter. You can follow us on social media at Book Soup, and you can even follow our Crowdcast page right here to get direct notifications. And past events are also available on our YouTube channel. And please support Book Soup and our author tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book. Copies will be signed, so that might be a Book Soup exclusive, so you should get your copy with us. And you can do that by clicking the green button also below the viewer screen. It'll redirect you to the website where you can complete the checkout process, and it won't interrupt viewing, so you can do that at any time. It should open in a new window. And we're also selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro FM and Kobo for those interested. And we're also open for in-store browsing, so if you're local to Los Angeles, please stop by. We'd love to see you daily from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And with that said, let me introduce our guests for this evening. Gary Goldstein is an award-winning writer for film, TV, and the theater with more than 30 produced screen and stage credits. The New York native and longtime LA resident has also been a contributing film reviewer and arts feature writer for the LA Times since 2007. The Last Birthday Party is Gary's first novel. Our in-conversation guest tonight, Ken Pisani, is the Los Angeles Times bestselling author of Amped and a finalist for the 2017 Thurber Prize for American Humor. His quirky murder mystery novella, Four Corners, was recently optioned for television and is available on Kindle. He recently completed a new novel, The Defection and Subsequent Resurrection of Nikolai Pushkin, a decade-spanning farce based on true events. Ken is also an Emmy-nominated producer, screenwriter, and playwright. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Gary and Ken. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy the presentation, everyone.
Right, see you soon.
Thank you, Sam, for having us and Book Soup. Maybe my favorite bookstore in Los Angeles. And when I did my first book reading, I did mine at Book Soup. So really, really special to be here and great to be here with you, Gary.
I was there. I remember.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you for coming. This is, just to get things straight, am I the last stop on your bookstore?
You are the last stop on my virtual book tour. This is my 8th one that I've done. I started in Boston and ended up in Los Angeles with a lot of stops along the way, all virtual. And they were great, so interesting, so many different questions from so many parts of the country, and really great to connect everywhere. But it's great to be back home in Los Angeles with Book Soup. And thank you to Sam and all the people at Book Soup for putting this together. They've been really great. We really appreciate it. And thanks to you, Ken, for asking the big questions. We appreciate it.
Well, and you did it all without air miles. So, yeah. So happy Friday, everybody.
I like that. Where's mine? I forgot. Very nice.
Well, it is Friday at 6. And so
I can promise you that's
the orders. So let's start with, I want to take a deep dive into this. We're both screenwriters, and we're both broke away from that to write our first book. So I'm very interested in the process. But first, just tell us what the book's about.
The book it's called The Last Birthday Party. If you haven't seen it, and it's about a writer, an LA writer, who the day after his 50th birthday party, his life falls apart. He's visited upon by 3 calamities, and his life falls apart. But it comes together because of those calamities in some really unexpected and extraordinary ways. And it's just a lot about reinvention and about how you never know what's going to happen when you wake up every morning, and how we have to take risks in life to move forward. And that's, really one of the themes. And one of the themes in it that I love, and it's something that I feel like I haven't written about enough, is what brings people together romantically and what splits them apart. How do people go from wanting to spend the rest of their lives together, love, honor, and obey, till death do us part, all of that, and then X amount of time later, they can't even look at each other. They just hate each other. How does that happen? So I take kind of a dive into that in this book with our main character, Jeremy, and his wife, soon to be ex-wife, Cassie, and also the new love interest that comes into his life, Annabelle, who comes into his life after he has an accident and needs an occupational therapist. It takes place over about a year. Actually, it's about six months, and then we epilogue to a year later. I think it's a hopeful book. I think it's very positive. People say it's funny, so I'll take it. It's been a joyous experience writing it and being involved with it.
It's very funny, and it's interesting because like every divorce starts with a love story. Mm-hmm. So is that what you wanted to write about? Was that the germ of the idea?
I think the germ of the idea was really more what happens to people, particularly in LA, and if you're in any phase of show business or that that part of the world, what happens to you as we get older, and where's your place? And this is a lot about somebody who had a big success early on, very early on in his life as a screenwriter, and if nothing happened after that, and he moved into other areas and gets a second chance to actually get back into that world. But as an older somebody 50, how he navigates that world that the gatekeepers are still in their 20s, and how you navigate it. And I think it's very common now, because as writers, as we continue working, longer years and all of that, there's more people out there doing it of all ages, which is great. So I want to take a look at that. And I, like I said, I love the idea of reinvention. So I kind of put that together, but I wanted to kick off the story at his 50th birthday party. That was always kind of like my beginning. And then it just sort of evolved from there. I can honestly say, as versus screenwriting, I didn't do a lot of outlining in this book, before I wrote. Screenplays, as you know, so much about outlining. Particularly if you're hired to write something, that an outline becomes part of the step process of what you're doing. But it was really liberating. And I kind of knew the points where I wanted to get at certain points in the book. I kind of kept story structure in my head the whole time, kind of screenplay structure. I think it's more or less structured the way a screenplay is structured, the way stories are told, basically. But it was very liberating, and there were a lot of surprises in the book. And frankly, I was surprised as I wrote them, because I didn't always know where I was going with it. So, I'm there with you, learning about these surprises in the book.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I mean, I'm not a big outliner, although I have to for film and TV projects. And in my book so far, I'm just throwing stuff out, and it's like maybe Dad's an Olympic biathlete, and then it just opens something that pays off later, and it's just a joy when that happens and it works, right, and it pays off. You mentioned generationally and a place you started with a lot of success and then get to be our age. Could you have written this book as a younger man?
No, I wouldn't have. The main character is 50. His son is 23. Years ago, I would have written the 23-year-old as the main character, and the father just as a supplemental character. No, I honestly feel that this book, not only what it's about, but the way it's written, is just kind of a convergence of everything that I've learned as a writer over the years. Between writing screenplays and teleplays and stage plays and even my journalism work. I think I lost. Did something happen?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened. I think it's really kind of a combination.
Maybe everybody else is gone, Gary, but you and me. I
got an email. That's weird. It's really kind of a coming together of so many things that I've written, stylistically, thematically, character-wise. I could never have written this, at a younger age, because it's really about looking back at life. It's about being in the middle of your life and looking back at it. And there are a lot of flashbacks in the book to how to the relationship that Jeremy and Cassie had, how they met, what they were like back then. It was very important to me that people would understand why they were together. I mean, so often you watch a movie, you read something, it's like, what are these people doing together? Why are they friends, you know? And here I wanted there to be a very clear reason, so we really understood what that dynamic was from the get-go. But how that dynamic, which worked in the beginning, it was kind of sexy and intoxicating in the beginning, how something like that can kind of turn, and the things that they loved about each other became kind of annoying. And you could see the seeds of it, but it could have gone either way. And little by little, it just, so they started like diverging. And I say our best qualities are our worst qualities. So everything that they liked about each other and that drew them to each other, the flip sides of those kind of personality traits can be a little annoying or distancing or whatever, based upon how it turned out. But it was very important to me that we knew why they were together. It's not so much seeing their marriage disintegrate, because it disintegrates the moment we meet them in the present. But it's really about understanding what those characters like and what drew them to each other, but via experiences, you know, not like just telling, but actually seeing experiences. They go on vacation. I talk about their vacations together. I talk about an accident that he had, a back problem he had as when they first met, and how she took care of him. I talk about their very first date, when they first met, all of these things that kind of make a relationship. And I hope that people really understand why they were together, but we get a sense of Cassie as the ex-wife, or the soon-to-be ex-wife, because I didn't want to make her a monster in any way. I just felt that she was somebody who really needed to break away from him. He wasn't quite aware of like how their relationship had sort of fell apart over the last 5 years, and how it just sort of went nowhere. And instead of moving forward, it was just kind of stagnating. And she's the one who has to kind of bring it to his attention. And at the same time, the new woman comes into his life very unexpectedly, and all the better parts of him come out because of her, as happens in relationships, you know, particularly between a first marriage, second marriage, that kind of thing.
Well, like I said, you know, every divorce starts as a love story. So it is good to go back and have those flashbacks and fill it in. And the second thing that it does quite successfully is it doesn't make Cassie a villain. It's very, you know, Jeremy's your protagonist, and we're following him, and the divorce is, for us, sudden. They have a party and she leaves him, but clearly it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And the book is no fun if she's just a villain. If he catches her cheating or whatever. So there's a nice depth to all these characters.
And there's a sense of mystery about her too, because for much of the book we really don't know where she is. She's just disappeared. She says, Don't follow me, don't call me, don't talk to me. And they share a son, so the son gets in the middle of it a lot. But eventually she starts showing up again, and we see her change. You know, she has her own arc, and kind of the way, you know, people think sometimes, oh, you know, well, I'll split up and my life will be great. But then you get into it, and it's not as easy as that. You know, it doesn't mean they should be together, but it's not quite the way everybody thinks it's going to be. But it was very important to not make her a monster, to make her dimensional and real. So in the end, when all these things happen with her, we can feel what she's feeling and kind of be on her side too.
So you have in a novel something that you don't have as readily in a film. You have the luxury of time. You know, this could have been 150,000 pages. Words.
It almost was.
Gary's new 150,000 page novel.
Yeah.
You have the luxury of time to really put some meat on the bones of these characters. Did you find that liberating? I see much of your familiar writing in the book, in a good way, but in movies there's so much shorthand. There's so much. Right. There's so much. Just give them 2 beats so that we get them very quickly, and then we can move through the plot.
Right. Well, you know, as you know, writing a screenplay, it's about using the least amount of words to say the most amount, which is very different than a book, because in a book, you don't have anybody coming in to set design your book and direct your book and shoot your book with a camera and, you know, actors to bring people to life. It's really just what's on the page. And so you actually, as the author, have to be the camera. and you have to provide all of the, all of the description and everything that we have to imagine, as we're reading it. So that does take more words, and it's fun, in a screenplay. Like with Annabelle, she's somebody who she dresses kind of quirky, and a lot of what she wears is really very it's kind of pivotal to her character and says a lot about her. Now in a screenplay, I would probably just in the very beginning say Annabelle, 49, 48, whatever she is, quirky dresser, and then the costumer would come up with quirky dressing, and that was it. Me as the camera, I had to come up with exactly what she was wearing and kind of really paint those kind of pictures. And you're painting a picture of what does a house look like? What does a backyard look like? What does a room at a meeting room look like? All those kinds of things. So I found it really interesting to write that way, and not having written a novel or a full novel before, and it was liberating. However, what I learned was, because my first draft was a little on the long side, and we ultimately, once I got my publisher, we ultimately edited, a significant amount of it to get to the length that we're at. Maybe it's not, maybe you don't have to sort of go off on as many tangents as you think you can. But anyway, it was very, very liberating to write. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. And also, conversely, you don't have to describe everything. Right. If you find that when you're reading a passage in a book, and if the passage says, the woman is in her nightgown, she comes down the stairs, she's holding a candle, she reaches the end, she opens the door, there's nobody there. As you're reading that, you're filling in details. I don't tell you she's blonde. I don't tell you what color she's wearing. I don't tell you about the carpeting on the wall or anything else. But right. you can leave that stuff out. And the audience, your reader will fill that in. And when you start to realize that, it opens up a whole other way of writing prose.
Yeah, and also writing dialogue in a book. It's like we tend to think, because I noticed in your book, in Amped, there was a lot of dialogue that was just dialogue, literally line, and we have to keep up with who's saying what, but you get it. Because it's distinct and we know what's going on. It's kind of interesting to not have to do, with every line of dialogue, he said, she said, he looked away, he, took a drink and whatever. It's liberating to not have to do that. And so I pulled a lot of that out along the way. And yet I definitely have more, I think I have more description in my dialogue than you have in some of your dialogue in Amped. But there's also no rule to it. You just want to make it vivid and make it move. And I think the best thing anybody can say about a book, aside from liking it, whatever, is that it moved fast, that they kept reading, it was propulsive, that kind of thing. And that's what's often lacking in books. You enjoy the books, but you can wait to get back to it. So I love it when somebody, I love reading a book that I can't wait to get back to, and that I can sit and read a chunk at one time. But a lot of that is kind of how you move through the prose. And I think in shortening my book, I think it became a much more propulsive book because of it once we did our editing.
As far as that moving forward, that plotting, and again, screenplays are much more regimented. How did you keep your plot moving? Because without giving too much away, a lot of shit happens early on. 3 bad things happen to this guy, right. and which is great. But then it's But in a screenplay, you might parse that out, right. or you might have a more serious result of those 3 things. But you have to keep designing moments to move it forward. There's a little road trip in your movie, right. In your book rather, and so how do you keep digging for a narrative engine?
Well, if you set up enough, the way it turned out, I set up enough mayhem in the book that everything had to be played out. And there were 3 things. You
mentioned mayhem. I don't want to interrupt, but it's my favorite genre. Things go hilariously wrong.
Right. Hilarity ensues. So you have, not without giving too much away, but I'll give it away. He has a problem with his job, a big problem with his job. His wife leaves him, and he has this accident after which he has to get shoulder surgery and wakes up in this giant abduction pillow brace that he's got to keep slung over his shoulder and his arm in one position for 6 weeks.
One could almost write an entire book about a guy who uses the loose of his own.
Yes, exactly. And I probably accidentally stole a few things from Amped.
By the way, I just want to tell the audience, this is a joke. I'm not really a jerk. I just did this.
He's not a jerk at all.
Yeah.
I love his book, and I'm so glad he has it there. It's really
I'm sorry. Please continue.
Definitely get it. And so I set up these 3 calamities, and they're things that really need a lot of, you can't just toss them off. I mean, they each have their trajectory. And then when you bring in the other characters in the book that have to kind of factor into how he plays out all these calamities. So there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot to really, especially with the arm, with the shoulder situation. It's such a new world for him. And I will say, if it hasn't been guessed already, I also had a very bad rotator cuff tear about 5 years ago, and woke up after surgery with this giant brace that they couldn't prepare me for. And it's like wearing pictures don't do it justice, really. It's literally like wearing it's like wearing a little refrigerator over your shoulder, basically. And because you can't move your arm. The worse the tear is, you can't move your arm. You got to keep it at 90 degrees for 6 weeks. And the only time you can take it off is when you shower, which is an entirely other nightmare, which I detail, I think, with as much humor as the situation will allow in the book. But so that takes a lot of explaining and all of that. And then when it's over, that part's over. And then the other parts kick in. So I didn't feel like I had a problem figuring out what to write, or to keep the story going. It came pretty naturally, I think.
Let's talk about your protagonist, and you just touched on something. I know you, and I read Jeremy, and you're both film critics, you're both screenwriters, you both had the episode with your arm.
Yeah.
You both have the same favorite restaurant. You both live in Laurel Canyon. By the way, I'm going to put your address in the chat so that your fans can come by for autographed copies. So how much of you is in Jeremy?
Well, I've been asked that question a lot, and it's a very fair question. The funny thing is that all of the trappings, so many of the trappings about Jeremy are me. And again, everything you pointed out, where he lives, all that, except as people, as basically innate people, we're very, very different. And I like to say that I learned a lot of the lessons over time that Jeremy has not yet learned. So I could bring my lessons that I learned over time into where he is at this moment in his life. So there's that. He's somebody who's he's been a more passive person. He's kind of been treading water his whole life. I'm a much more proactive person. I think I'm probably a little more confident than he is, although he gains confidence along the way. Our marriages are very different. But I did. People have told me that his voice, because there's a lot of inner monologuing. We hear him. His voice is like another character. A lot of people have said, "Oh, he sounds like you," or his humor is kind of like your humor, which I guess is just sort of inevitable. But I feel like
the inner monologue was one of my favorite.
Yeah,
one of my favorite parts. I mean, he asks rhetorical questions. He asks questions that either he knows or doesn't want to hear the answer to, and he's a rhetorical mess.
Yes, he is. And then it's up to the reader to maybe fill it in. So I think the voice is kind of similar, but the way he approaches the world, I think, is really different. But I like that he gains a spine over the course of the story, and he realizes, and this is what happens when you're at a certain age, where it's like not that you don't care, but you've been through enough where you kind of realize you can be a little bit more of who you are, and it's okay. And the world is not going to fall apart. And if you don't sell a script or something, whatever, it's not the end of the world. And also romance comes into his life, which also ultimately becomes much more important than anything else, and really carries him through.
You mentioned he's passive, and that's a kiss of death. You would get noted to death by a studio, a passive protagonist. Yet for me, that's part of what makes him so fun to read and to watch. And so talk a little bit about that, about writing a passive character that you maybe would not have been allowed to get away with.
Yeah. Well, he's not passive. I mean, he's lively, and he's very present. He's not passive.
But things happen to him.
But things happen.
He's reacting.
And that's definitely the point of it in the beginning. His wife was like, "Where you been the last 5 years? Haven't you heard what I've been saying?" And he goes, "Why haven't we talked about this?" And she goes, "We've been talking about it. You just haven't heard it." And I think that's a really big part of it. That he's just detached. Maybe detached is a better word. I don't know. But he's been living in his world and not even realizing until he kind of takes count of it, how much they've changed and how disconnected the two of them are. I mean, it's little things like, you know, she never reads his film reviews anymore. Just the little things that you usually support your partner with. And she's like, and he says, yeah, I know you're a good writer. I don't need to read them to find out. And then when he meets Annabelle, she's a total movie fan like he is, and they have such a connection that way. And you know, he never realized, basically in the very beginning of the book, when he flashes back on how he and Cassie first met. They met outside a movie theater, and which she was not going into, he was, but their conversation was just, it set the tone for the fact that this is not somebody who really cares about movies, certainly not the way he does, and yet it was okay, it was cool. You know, it's like he liked teaching her, she liked being taught. You know, he liked sharing with her and experiencing these things for the first time with her, and then it sort of goes south. But I think if he's passive and becomes proactive and learns from it, you know, I think that's the main thing. And I think as he goes along, he's kind of forced into proactivity, but it serves him really well.
Yeah, there's huge growth there, and it's just like starting off with it's like starting with Ebenezer Scrooge, and you know, you've got a long way to go with him. Supporting cast, great women characters, you know, Cassie's wife, Annabelle, who we all fall in love with. You know, I want to break my arm and have her knock at the door and show up and give me physical therapy, and don't tell Amanda I said that. And his mom, Joyce. So tell me about, now you've got your protagonist, and you've got the idea and the divorce and moving forward, and now how do you start populating it with your supporting cast?
Well, you know, it's like I love writing adult parents, because I think they also tend to be the kind of people that pretty much can say what they want at a certain point. And Joyce is 84 at this point, so she's very lively, but she's like, you know, she kind of tells it like it is in a very loving way. And she was really very fun to write. She's kind of patterned after my aunt, who is not with us anymore, but she had this wonderful way of speaking that kind of always drew you in, and she was a real cheerleader for everybody. And when you were in front of her, you were the only person in the room, and everything you did was the best there was. But she always made you feel like $1 million. And I put that buoyancy in Joyce's voice. And you know, it's a little bit, honestly, my mother passed away a long time ago. So as an adult, I've been without my mother for a very long time. So to me, it's a little bit of Joyce, like the kind of relationship I'd love to have with a mother if she was still alive. You know, so there's a little bit of that. And they're very close, but the mother tells it like it is. And of course, when somebody knows you your entire life, they have not an obligation, but they have, you know, they have the right basically to say certain things. So I thought that part was fun. You know, with Annabelle, I just wanted somebody who on the surface was kind of the polar opposite of Jeremy, somebody who was looser and funkier and you know, just said what she wanted to and just was quirky. But then we find that they're actually much closer as people than either they thought. And they both have had a loss in their life. Jeremy's lost his wife through a divorce, but Annabelle has lost her husband the year before he died of cancer. So this is the first man that she's been interested in or had anything to do with in the year, and she's treading into, you know, new territory, as Jeremy is, very quickly. So they have a lot of baggage, the two of them, but they make it work. The baggage works for them until they have to, you know, basically figure out what to do with that baggage. But she was a really fun character to write. I had a little bit. One of my favorite books is The Accidental Tourist by Ann Tyler, and in the movie was the Gina Davis character, the dog trainer.
You can almost see Gina Davis when you're reading your book.
Yeah. It's just that sort of wonderful, embracing, warm, don't worry about a thing, you know, quirky person. So I think there was a little bit of that in that dynamic. And then for Matty, his son, you know, he's kind of the son that, you know, maybe I wish I woke up one day and had a 23-year-old son, you know, floating around somewhere. He's what I love about Matty is that he's very impulsive and very kind of, you know, a little flaky, but he's there for his dad every step of the way. And he starts a lot of things and doesn't finish them, and it becomes sort of a joke between them. but he's really much more solid, deceptively solid. And he's definitely there for his father and for his mother, who is kind of caught between their separation. But he's very cool. You know, he just sort of lets everything roll off his back and keeps it separate, which as the child of divorce, I always found, you know, was difficult, because you've got one parent on one side, one parent on the other side. And when you're an adult, as I was when my parents split up, it's like, you know, you have a little bit more independence in terms of how you handle it, but it's still, you're kind of caught in the middle. So that was him. And also I take Matty on a romantic journey too. And his romantic journey happens in a way because of Jeremy meeting Annabelle and her connections and all of that. So that because a little bit, this is all like, you know, you open the door and everything changes based upon who you meet, which is that. And then, you know, he's got an agent who, I think, you know, she's a little broad, but she's very much like agents, that he's kind of dismissive. Let me just get back to my work. Let me get off the phone, agents. But she knows what she's doing. She's smart. She knows what she's doing. And somehow or other, she may forget the title of his script or whatever, but it's like she knows what she's doing, and she makes shit happen. Is really what it is. You know, she's a real fun character to write. And it just, you know, again, it's populating people with people that are fun but flawed and quirky, and you know, they turn out to be better people than we think. They kind of come through for Jeremy in a weird way, as he does for them. And the supporting characters, like in any movie or you know, TV show or whatever, really can be the meat of the story, and they were really enjoyable to write.
It's funny, Matty is he's a good kid, quote unquote, and very supportive of both his parents, and Joyce is very supportive. Why were you ever tempted to have one of them in conflict with Jeremy? Because that's what we do. We, you know, when you start throwing characters in, you know, you want somebody in conflict with them because that's where the drama, and certainly that's where the comedy is going to come from. And yet you do mine more than a fair amount of comedy and dramatic momentum out of these characters who are all just trying to help each other.
Right. Well, there's a lot of conflict with Cassie, I would say. I mean, she's really the most fraught character. And as it goes along, there's a lot more conflict. And as he pulls away, you know, there's a lot more conflict. So there's that, and the whole kind of divorce, the decisions they have to make, the big decisions they have to make as they go through their divorce, but becomes a part of it. I think people are like stumbling blocks for him rather than conflict. You know, his editor, the studio executives, the production company executives, his agent, you know, even his mother, you know, as close as they are, she's always, you know, keeping him in line. You know, she says she is a widow herself. Her husband, his father, died 6 years ago. She's never met anybody else. She doesn't want to. And she gives him a lesson about what it's like to be with a widow and how you need to be really careful. She says, do not hurt her. You know, you may not realize it, but she's way more fragile than you think. She says, I know, I went through it. And, you know, and she comes back to him at some point, as I told you not to hurt her. What did you do? And, you know, they have this thing. So there's kind of like that. It's not conflict as much as pushback from people. And then look, even Matty, his son, you know, as close as they are, he's always giving it right back to him. You know, he's making fun of him. He's you know, trying to make him a better person. He teases him. But I think there's a lot of love, and then there's a lot of truth. But with what Matty says to him, to bring Jeremy out of this kind of cocoon that he's been in. So it's like, let's just get Jeremy out of his cocoon is so much of what these people are trying to do.
So it's interesting, the character Joyce, and not to get too personal, but I know you were close to your father, and your father lived much longer. And I'm thinking, so why is there not a father figure in the book? Is Joyce there designed as a character, as a widow, to be the widow point of view that he's going to learn from? Well,
partly. I mean,
or is there some wish fulfillment? I mean, you talk about also, you know.
Yeah, this is more. I mean, I wanted the relationship between him and his mother, and the relationship between him and his father, as he flashes back on it and talks about it. They had a good relationship, but there were things, you know, and Joyce, his mother, is so protective of the father's memory that he can never bring up some of the not great things the father did, even though the father was fine. I mean, the father's perfectly fine, but it was a different kind of relationship than he has with his mother. So to me, I just wanted, enjoy writing mothers, and it was really maybe a combination of parental things. But yeah, I just chose the mother. And again, part of that is a little wish fulfillment as well, I think. And I've written a lot of fathers too as well, so I think I wanted to get back to a mother. I'm
just giving a reminder to our viewers if they to put questions in the Q&A, and we'll push through a little, and then we'll go to their questions. So there's a lot of familiar stuff here, and I don't mean that pejoratively at all, but it reads like a rom-com, and a very good one, and a very funny one, and just hitting all the beats. So why isn't it a movie? Why didn't you sit down and write another screenplay?
Well, when I wrote the book, I didn't even know what I had, and what it was going to be. So I never even thought about it as a movie. I really didn't. For as much as I'm always thinking about everything as a movie or a TV series or whatever, I really didn't. It was a fairly pure experience as a writer. And then once I got involved with finding a publisher and getting out there was really so much to do, to edit the book and to just market it and be involved. And it's really been a journey, as you know. So I really didn't have time to think about a script yet. And then
in the first
place, the right? Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't think it was a big enough story for a screenplay. As a book, it became a bigger story. As a screenplay, if I wrote it as a screenplay, I'm not so sure if it would have been big enough. If it was high concept. You need a car
chase in the middle. You need
you need something, explosion, something, and also it wasn't to me high concept enough. It became higher concept once I wrote the book. So this was one case where I really think I had to write the book to see what I had. And look, people have read it and say, oh, make a great movie. People have said it'd make a really great limited TV series. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. But I will tell you, I definitely want to write those, whatever, if they happen. So I'll be there for that.
So you're certainly hopeful that this might be an adaptation.
I'm alive. I'm hopeful. I mean, that's it. Look, the nice thing now is that, this is a story that X number of years ago, I think would have made a movie immediately. I think it would have been like A Little Miss Sunshine or any of the smaller family comedies, and we've seen so many of them, and may still be. They're a little rarer now, and but on the other hand, you've got streamers who are really clamoring for material. Things can be nichier now. The main thing I think it has going for it in that world is that it's a strong main character for an actor to play. I think there's a lot for an actor to dig his teeth into, and they're fun supporting characters, but I think it's a great part for the right actor. So we'll see. I'm an optimist at heart, but we'll see what happens. I just want to get the book out.
Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson would be good. He'd be very good. I thought about Paul Rudd. I like him. I thought about Jason Bateman. Owen Wilson is good.
And the great thing about Paul Rudd is no matter how long it takes, he's not going to get any older.
He's not going to age. Yeah, he's not going to age. He is just 50 or something, 51. We'll see what happens.
Did you start writing this during COVID or during the lockdown or when all that happened?
Oddly enough, I started writing it 2 months before COVID started. I started writing at the beginning of last January. And I was kind of on my way. And then when COVID hit, I just ended up with more time than I usually would have. So I was able to move through it faster. I thought I would be writing it along with working on other things, which is how it kind of started off. But then little by little, the industry shut down and the world shut down. So I had a little more time. So I would say I got it done faster. And I got the first draft done over the course of about 6 months.
Can I swear?
What? Sorry?
Can I swear?
Yeah. Go ahead. But thank you. But it took me like maybe a month to edit or whatever. But it was fast. It was a fast process, and this one really came out of me very quickly. I think, which I think first novels sometimes do. My first stage play I wrote came right out of me very fast too. Sometimes that just happens. But yeah, COVID. It's funny too, because I remember saying to my publisher, "Do you think I should refer to COVID in the book? You know, I have something in the book about traffic in LA, and like when is there not never traffic? I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but not ever traffic in LA." And the answer is during the pandemic. And I said to my publisher, "You think I should put that in there?" And she said, "No, make it timeless. It doesn't matter. Who knows how long the pandemic will actually last?" Well, you know, my book is out, and we're still dealing with the pandemic, but. Yeah, it wasn't pandemic inspired in any way, but it definitely I had more time to do it and deal with it and move it forward, because there was so much to do to get the book out there, you know, find a publisher, all that.
Yeah, God bless you. It takes me literally years to finish a book, and of course it's because I'm jumping in and out of other things, right, as you must be. But yeah, I mean, you know, the year of COVID really does. You know, look, I've been noodling around with my new novel for a very long time, and COVID hit, and you know, bam, I finished it. I mean, yeah. in just a few months. But it is there's nothing I didn't write during 2020 where I didn't think, does COVID belong here? Do I mention it? Do I acknowledge it?
Everybody thought about that.
Omnipresent, but you don't want it in the book. You know, you want it to be evergreen.
No, and then people would say also, even with TV shows and movies, like nobody wants to see it. You know, it's gone on so long, maybe that it's just inevitable that some things will have to happen in there. But I think mostly people are just like, we don't want to know about it. Anyway, my main character had enough to contend with without COVID. So
I'm going to jump over to our Ask a Question portion. It's very exciting. Well, I've had this question ready too. So what's next for Gary Goldstein? Are you writing another book?
Good question. Well, I actually have written another book. I'm about maybe
Can I swear again?
Yeah, sure. But I'm not done. I've got maybe like 3 chapters left. And it's something I've been working on actually since the beginning of this year. It started in January of this year. It's just taken longer because I've had so much to do with this book and other things. But yeah, it's a very, it's a much more serious, it's a family story. It's a mother-son story, but it's a very much more serious story than Last Birthday Party, which is different for me. You know, they usually say, well, if you're going to write in one genre, you should, like, my follow-up should be another kind of sort of lighter-hearted, you know, wry book. But I don't know. This was just something I really wanted to write, and I do believe as a writer, we have to write the thing that will get us in the chair and in front of the computer. You know, there's just certain things that are in us that we really want to. We really need to write about and talk about. And you look, the book world, I learned a tremendous amount about books and the book world during this period. I've read, like everybody, 1 million books in my life. But it's like once you're in the driver's seat, you know, writing the book and getting a book out there, it's very different, and you learn so much. And it's similar to the movie and TV business in some ways, and very different in other ways. And the nice thing about a book, as you know, is that it has a life to it. It's not just an opening weekend. It's not just the Saturday night the movie airs on TV. It has a life to it. It takes people a long time to get to a book. And hopefully, you know, I said to somebody, I'll probably be promoting this book for the rest of my life. But it really, it's nice. I mean, it can roll out. Yeah, you know, it was that. So in terms of what's next for me, I'm finishing up this novel. I'm working on a Christmas movie for television. I've been asked to write a couple of other TV movies for another company, so we're kind of trying to put that together now. And I'm a film reviewer and occasional feature writer for the LA Times, so I hope to continue doing that. Of course, the world of movies and theatrical movies is a little up in the air right now, but that's my second love, reviewing films.
Has anybody at the LA Times read your book and found any similarity to the character who fired? Like, did you offend anybody at the LA Times?
Well, I tried to rectify. I mean, the people at the LA Times who I've worked with them since 2007. I've worked for various editors and people. Everybody's been fantastic. I mean, they're the most wonderful group of people, and I've been treated so well by them, and I've loved the work that I've done with them. But to make characters kind of more, I don't know, cinematic or dramatic or comedic, I took a lot of liberties with people. These are not based, literally, are not based on anybody that I've worked with. And I actually, in the acknowledgments, I make sure to say that. I the editor, I refer to his editor at the paper. That my editor, his editor is the anti-version of my editor, because my editor is so great. Yeah, but I don't know if anybody's read it. I actually haven't heard from them on it. We'll see. The funny thing is, I had to use the LA Times, whereas normally X number of years ago, you would have, come up with a fake name of a newspaper, because there used to be several newspapers in the city. So if there were 2 or 3 daily papers in a big city like LA, or New York still has 3, you could make up a name, and it could be, what is it? It's that one. No, it's that one. But I needed a daily paper, because that factors into what goes on in the beginning. That becomes a part of it. And I was like, what am I going to do? Call it the Los Angeles Bugle or whatever? I really just wanted to go with it, the way it was.
As soon as I'm reading the Los Angeles Herald Sun, I'm like, I'm just putting the book away. It's like, we lost it.
If I'm putting in these real restaurants, I might as well put in the real newspaper. And I think it's fine. I mean, it's fun. I think I played a little fast and loose with the way reviews are written and all that stuff. A little dramatic license anyway.
Yeah. Now you just have to make sure that everybody knows these are fictional characters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a father and a sister in my book, and they're not great people. And I was very clear in my acknowledgments that my sister is this lovely ebullient person, and my dad is, and my dad, he's just awesome. And so, no, these are not real people, please.
Right. Well, in the very beginning of the book, they have the publisher disclaimer, about any what is it? Any similarity to
person living or dead purely comes from
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have. On a daily basis, did you just keep moving forward, or did you rewrite as you went? That's actually a very good question. How you process, and when you had a first draft, did you then go back and rewrite? Yeah,
great question. I pretty much moved forward. I wouldn't say I edited as I went along, but unlike with a screenplay, usually my first draft of a screenplay, I kind of move forward really fast. I don't craft the words, because we tend to lose a lot in the screenplay along the way. So I don't like to spend a lot of time being precious with these words, because we may lose the scene altogether. Here, I felt that as long as I was comfortable with the scene and the actions I was writing and all of that, I wanted it to, I'd probably keep it. So I did sort of edit as I went along, but I didn't spend a ton of time editing it. It was pretty, it moved. I think the writing moved pretty quickly, and also I knew that no matter what, I would give it to an editor, a professional editor, to deal with, to begin with, before I sent it out to anybody, because there were a lot of things that that needed work. So I didn't really edit a lot as I went along, but when it was over, I read it from start to finish and edited, made changes. But oddly, I think it might have gotten even a little bit longer as I made changes, because I was adding some things and things I felt needed more description or whatever. And like I said, ultimately we pulled back on them, and we lost X number, 10, 12,000 words from the original manuscript to get to where it is now. And that was an amazing learning experience, working with the editors, and we kind of worked together on it. And there was very little that we lost that I had any issue with at all, because the story and the characters completely remained as they were. It was just tightening. And
I have those 10, 12,000 words for my next book, because I'm a little thin right now.
I know. I need to recycle them. There was actually one scene that I loved that they suggested I lose, and it was a short scene. And I was like, nope, I'm keeping this. I was going to lay down the law. I love this. My favorite scene. I love it. And they said, fine, whatever you think. It's not that long. We think it's tonally a little bit off. And I read it, and I reread it, and I re-looked at it. It's like, maybe I don't love it so much. And I got rid of it, and and it's fine. Glad I did. But I will use it in something else, because if it wasn't quite perfect for this book, it is good for something else down the line. That's the great thing. Anything you cut out, you can recycle.
That's the other really big difference between writing a novel and writing a work for hire for film or TV is, you have to do their notes.
Yeah, right.
The editor's notes, your agent's notes, your publisher's notes, they're suggestions. I mean, you'd be wise not to ignore all of them, right, or even any of them, but it really is up to you, and that's liberating. As far as the revision process, I find that when I'm revising and editing a lot while I'm working on something, I'm just procrastinating. It's just
right, just swirling the words around.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to look at the bigger picture of it. It's what we do. I mean, we're definitely procrastinating. Yeah.
Sure. One more. What is your kryptonite as a writer?
Oh, what a great question. Let's see. My kryptonite as a writer. I don't. That's a really good question. I think maybe just not. I think my kryptonite is probably thinking too much about what might sell, and not starting something. Not with his book. I'm mostly with screenwriting. Because so much of it is market driven, and I try never to write anything just for the market. I try to write something that I think I can write well, but also can sell. But I think as writers, we tend to, if we want to make a living as a writer, I think we tend to look at the marketplace a lot and make that the deciding factor in terms of what we write. And the marketplace changes so much over time that it's really kind of hard to nail one thing and say, oh, this is what they want today, and then it turns out that they have too many of them, and by the time you're done with your script, it's over. So I would say just maybe overthinking what I should be writing, as opposed to like with this book, just like saying, not worried about its future, I just want to write this book. And writing something that was interesting to me and spoke to me, and I hope spoke to other people, and just having fun with it. So maybe the kryptonite is just because process-wise, I don't seem to have a lot of problems per se. I mean, it's just I've been writing a long time, so it really, I think I kind of worked through a lot of the process issues that I may have had in the beginning. But yeah, it's just maybe thinking a little too much about what it is I'm writing as opposed to just going and writing it.
Fair enough. Okay, yeah. How about we close with an excerpt? I'd love to hear something from the book.
I would love to. So glad you asked. So I'm going to read.
Just go right to the ending and read the last chapter.
I would love to read the epilogue. It's my favorite part of the book, I have to be honest. But I am going to read, this is the first meeting that Jeremy has with Annabelle when she comes to his house to be his occupational therapist, because when he's in this,
he answers the door like this.
Yeah, right, exactly. He has to use his nose to answer the door. He realizes that he's going to be in this contraption for 6 weeks, and he needs to figure out how can he get back to writing with one hand, because he can't move the arm. How can he lives alone. His wife is gone. How's he going to shower? How's he going to do all of these things? So his doctor says, well, we can recommend an occupational therapist. So Annabelle shows up, and he's kind of nervous because the first person, he's a mess, and he hasn't showered in all these days because he can't shower because of the brace and all this stuff. And he's just hoping that she's seen it all and won't be too grossed out by what he looks like and who he is. And she comes to the door, and this is their first meeting. Well, aren't you a sorry sight, was the first thing out of Annabelle's mouth when Jeremy greeted her at the front door. It might have seemed brash if it wasn't completely true. This is good. You should have seen me before I tried to clean myself up, joked Jeremy, partly to relieve the anxiety he'd been feeling about the stranger who'd be coming into his home to help, and partly because there was something so instantly disarming about Annabelle, with her loose, wavy locks, petite frame, and crinkly eyes. She wore olive green capri pants, a stretchy, long-sleeve t-shirt with a koala bear on it, and a pair of stylish memory foam sneakers. She was, in a word, adorable. Well, don't you worry. My line of work, I see it all, Annabelle said, confirming Jeremy's suspicions. She looked beyond him and into the house, though it'd be much more effective if we did this inside and not in the doorway. There went those crinkly eyes again. Jeremy moved away from the door and made an entree gesture with his free hand. Annabelle gave his abduction sling the once-over as she walked in. You must have torn the shit out of your rotator cuff to end up in a brace that size, Annabelle said. Only the second one of those I've ever seen. Think you can handle it? Jeremy asked, and then realized how double entendre flirty it must have sounded. He cleared his throat and swallowed. I mean, yeah, it's huge. Okay, that didn't sound right either. He quickly shifted gears before she could respond. Can I get you some water? A coffee? Thanks, but I come prepared, she answered, pulling a metal water bottle from her oversized shoulder bag. Annabelle looked around the living room with its beamed ceiling, curved archways, and nubby overstuffed couch. She pronounced the room cozy, and then proceeded to take a seat on the mission-style armchair. She gave Jeremy no directions, but since it was his house and all, he figured it was okay to sit on the couch. He settled in as best he could. Annabelle opened an iPad and made some notes, then looked up at Jeremy. So, she said. So, Jeremy echoed. How are you doing? She asked. Honestly? No, lie to me, because that's really going to help me help you, she quipped. That got an unexpected laugh out of Jeremy. Annabelle grinned in return. She took a few more notes and then fixed her gaze back on her patient. Jeremy fidgeted and then said the first thing that came to mind. My wife left me less than a week ago, and frankly, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. Annabelle was not expecting that, nor was Jeremy. Was that honest enough? He asked. Annabelle tapped at her iPad, then took a slug of water from her bottle. Yeah, that was super honest, the therapist said. I'm really sorry. When Jeremy offered no rejoinder, she asked, should I be? In general, probably, but in specific, hard to say, he answered, unsure why he was being so open to this person he just met. Maybe it was his way of expressing his disappointment that except for a 4-word text, hope you're adjusting okay, it said, Cassie hadn't been in touch since she dropped him off the other day at the house. Her absence spoke volumes, and he needed to hear that loud and clear. So, then you're dealing with your injury all by yourself, Annabelle asked, looking around the room as if a caregiver might pop out of the wall. Well, my son and mother have been in and out to help, but yeah, I'm pretty much flying solo. He flexed the fingers of his stiff right hand, trying to work back some circulation. Annabelle noticed. She rose and went to Jeremy, and without a word, tore off the Velcro straps that fastened his arm to the abduction pillow. He looked up at her confused. Guess what? You can take your arm out for a spin now and then. Loosen it up a bit. Go ahead. Give it a little stretch, she says. But I know what you thought, she said patiently, but as long as you keep your arm straight out at that 90-degree angle and just gently move it, you'll be fine. I promise. Annabelle put her hand over her heart. That's when Jeremy noticed her wedding band, wondered what her marriage was like, and gave her head an endearing tilt. Ready, she asked? Jeremy nodded, entranced, and slowly lifted his arm up out of the open straps and carefully stretched it out. He gave a little groan of pleasure. Oh my God, this feels so good. If he wasn't already so self-conscious, he would have shed a tear of joy. And it goes on from there.
Lovely. She's adorable.
She's adorable.
Those crinkly eyes.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Gary. Everybody who's watching, I just put our information in the chat if you would like to follow us both on Twitter, and we both have websites. Mine is kenpisani.com, which, as luck would have it, was available when I needed a domain name, and Gary's is close. GaryGoldsteinLA.com. Gary Goldstein was probably taken.
It was taken. It was. Okay. There's Sam coming back.
Well, thank you so much. Hi. I didn't mean to cut you off. You can keep.
No. I think all good.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and thank you both for being with us. Congratulations, Gary.
Oh, thank you, Sam.
Also envious of your speed of writing, and I learned tonight that I'm procrastinating.
There you go.
Stuck in a scene right now. So
yeah, get off and start writing.
Yeah, I needed that. So thank you guys for such a great conversation, and congrats again. And thank you everyone for watching at home. And everyone have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Cheers, everybody.
Yes, cheers. You finished that drink. Excellent. Love it.
Good night.